Hello, welcome to Learning C# Fundamentals from Scratch. My name is Alex Horton. I decided to make this vlog series as a way for individuals who are either beginner or intermediate developers of C#, or if you've never heard or used C# before, to be able to pick up C# from scratch, and to learn some fundamentals, to learn some things, to help you get started on C#, and hopefully help you down the road of learning some skills and some tricks and some tips on your own. This is not to be a solution for a formal classroom environment learning. You should really decide or really figure on taking a class in C# if you can afford it. But with the cost of schooling in this country, it's very expensive to take any kind of a class in C# or any kind of a development class at a higher learning institution and not go broke, unfortunately. So there's a multitude of different areas and ways to learn information about C# that will help you. And there's plenty of people that you can ask that I'm sure that you might know that will help you to grasp some of the more complex fundamentals of C#. So we're going to go ahead and get started with a brief history of C#, who uses C#, why should I as a developer learn C#, what is an IDE and which one are we going to use, and we're going to build our first very basic Hello World application in C#. So first, C# is a modern general purpose object-oriented language. It was built by Microsoft and approved by the European Computer Manufacturers Association, or ECMA, and the International Standards Organization, which is ISO. It was developed by Anders Heiselberg and his team during the development of the .NET framework. So a bunch of really smart guys got together with Microsoft and the ECMA and the ISO guys and gals, and they got together and they built this language that helps you interact with the .NET framework more efficiently, and they made standards around it, and people use it today. More props to them. I really appreciate that they did this so many years ago. That's the end of the history. Who uses C#? Well, C# is used by a multitude of different individuals, and I just kind of focused on the United States here. C# is used, primarily in the coast area. Here's Florida down here. Here's the other coast, and here's the Midwest and the Rust Belt and stuff like that. So it's used all over the place. And so C# is a language that can be pretty lucrative. You can make quite a bit of money if you're a C# developer, because it exposes you to other technologies as well. Why should you learn C#? Well, it's easy to learn. And you'll find out in this particular video series, C# is very easy to learn. Some of the different concepts are a little bit more complex about OOP, which is object-oriented programming. But once you get your head wrapped around how they work and why you want to use those, then there you go. You can learn a lot. And there's a multitude of different places to learn. It's a statically typed language, which means it's very strict in its syntax. It won't allow, and being strict in its syntax, it means that it won't allow you to do something that C# is not developed to do. You can't put, for example, the great example of that is in Visual Basic. You can create a string variable and put a numeric variable's value into that string variable, and you won't have an issue. It'll let you do that. In C#, it won't let you do that without casting the variable the right way, which means you would take a numeric value and you would basically translate it into a string variable and then use it. So C# makes you do that, and it also checks your code before it allows you to build your app and deploy your apps. So other than logic gaps, in your code, which is something that a developer has to discover, syntax and the actual coding language won't allow you to do something that C# is not developed to do. The next thing is of why you should learn C# is because it's in demand. There's a lot of demand for C# developers out there. The reason why is because C# is very, very similar to Java. in the syntax. But I mean, there's obviously some keyword differences and some fundamental differences, but Java and C# are very high demand languages that people are always hiring for. So there's an abundance of jobs out there, and sometimes there's not enough developers to go around. It's an in-demand thing, and if you like tinkering and you like, working in development, creating new things, it's a way to go. Finally, there's different levels of flexible application in C#, which means that C# can be used for a very simple task, such as iterating through a file's contents to find certain values, or you can use it to create games. There's two game platforms right now. That's Unity and Epic Games. They both use C# in game development. So if you've ever heard of Fortnite, that's a game that was built in Epic using the Epic software, the Epic Games engine, and it uses C# as its platform or baseline. And then Unity games are games like Angry Birds and other games like that use C# as a foundational platform. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at our IDE, and this is what we're going to use to develop our applications in. And we're going to use Visual Studio as our IDE. And the reason why we're going to use Visual Studio is because it's one of the best IDEs out there, in my own opinion. There's Eclipse out there, obviously, but that's more used for Java work. But Visual Studio is an IDE that Microsoft supports and they distribute, and it allows you to do an abundance of different things, and it's got an abundance of different hookups and hook-ins and platforms and libraries and things of that nature that you can use in Visual Studio. So what we're going to do is, and obviously Visual Studio is available in Mac or PC. I'm not a Mac guy, so I'm a PC guy, unfortunately. Fortunately, I should say. I don't know. So there's 3 different flavors of Visual Studio that you can use. You can use the Enterprise or the Professional. Those require licenses to be purchased. They're very expensive licenses, and they usually come as part of a volume licensing package, which means that you would get multiple licenses usually through a Professional or Enterprise license. And again, with the money, you get more availability of different applications and options that come with it. So these are kind of like the Cadillac versions of Visual Studio. Visual Studio Community, however, is a free, fully functional development environment for people that are students and open source and individual developers. So you can use Visual Studio Community to create a game, like let's say like a Fortnite or whatever, and then you can deploy those games on the Windows Store or other places that if you so chose to. So you can use Visual Studio Community to do that for yourself. So you would want to download Visual Studio Community, and I won't go through the download here because I've already got it downloaded, but you'll see it pop up, and then you'll get a download and all that kind of stuff. So you want to download it and install it when you get the chance to. Okay. And once you do that and you've got it installed and everything's hunky-dory, what you'll want to do is launch it, and you'll see you'll see the application pop up for you here. You'll see a recent tab. You'll saw me get rid of one of the recent tabs. That was just one that I was doing off on the side there. You'll see a recent tab. You'll see an open or recent area, an open section here where you can open up open up existing projects from either a repository or somewhere on your desktop or your drive that you have access to. You can also open up new projects. I'm starting here as well. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a console application in the .NET framework. So you can either do that from here, or you can go up to the File, New, Project, and do it that way. And so you'll see a multitude of different ones here. The one we're going to concentrate on today is the console application. We're going to call our console application Hello World. And we'll create a directory for that. We'll make sure it's in the most current framework that I have installed here. And we'll say OK. And right now it says, hey, you've already got one over there called Hello World. So we'll call it something different. We'll call it Hello World 2. And say OK. And what will happen is it'll pop up your code editor, a Solution Explorer, and properties. And so you won't see anything under properties because you don't have anything, any properties that to speak of any objects. But over here on the right hand side, you'll see your Solution Explorer, and you'll see your solution name, and then you'll have a class under that name called program. What I'm going to do, just for grins and giggles, is I'm going to right click and rename this. And we'll call it Hello World. And it says you're renaming a file. Would you like to perform a renaming the project of all references to the code element program? Say yep. That's just kind of a real fast and dirty way to do that. You could always just create a new class and call it Hello World 2, but I'm just being lazy about this. So what you want to do is over here under this static void main subroutine, which is the main subroutine for all C# programs. You can't delete this. If you delete this, you're gonna have issues. It won't let you compile without that. So inside of this first curly brace, which is opening, we're going to put a space in here, or enter a line, an empty line, and we're going to type console dot right line and put a open parenthesis there, and then we're going to put a double quote there, quotation marks. And you'll see that it turns pink there, and there's a bunch of stuff kind of flying around all over the place. We'll get into that into another session. But we're going to type Hello World, exclamation point. And at the end of that, we're going to put a semicolon, which signifies to C# that I'm done with that line of code. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to save our project by clicking save up here. And then we're going to hit control, hold down the control key and then the F5. And on mine, you know what? I've got my virus scan up here, and it really annoys. There. So, yep. It really annoys because I get stuff that pops up and says, hey, we're going to run this thing. But anyway, we're going to hit Control and F5. And what that's going to do is it's going to run our program. And it, as you can see, we see Hello World here. Press any key to continue. So congratulations. If you've got this to pop up, then you've actually written your first line of code. And you've actually compiled it, written it, and you've run your first line of code without issue. And just to be on the safe side, let's go over here and click where it says errorless down here, if you see it. And there's no errors there. So that means that we've successfully we've created an application, and we've run it, and we have compiled it, and we've executed the code, and it did exactly what we wanted it to do. So in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to go over syntax of C#, some syntax, some variables, some operators of what those are, some basic conditionals in C#, and then compiling and running code in C#. So until next time, hopefully this video is it starts to pick up some, or it gets more popular as people are starting to learn. Again, I'm no C# expert by any stretch of the imagination. I've been exposed to C# over a number of years, and so I am not. If you see me do something in here that doesn't make sense, please comment or subscribe and comment on there. Please do not leave negative comments. That is not what we're here for. This is just a community. We're going to try to do something new. We're going to try to bounce ideas off each other's head and or each other, not each other's heads, and try and come to an agreement of how we want to do things. And we're going to do this in a way that doesn't make people seem like they're being talked down to. Right? Sometimes one of the things that I found that when I've looked at videos or I've explored different things, that sometimes, or I've spoken to people, that I inadvertently may talk down to people, unfortunately, because they may not understand what's going on. My goal here is to try to get that out of the way, and we can all come to an agreement in more of a layman's terms of the way things kind of work. So until the next video, I hope you subscribe, and God bless.